Milton Friedman taught that nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. On Monday, I attended a town council meeting primarily to meet with my representative and senator about several issues that concern me. And during the town council meeting, the entire line of questioning, there were 4 candidates there running for office in the midterm elections, and so the town councilors took the opportunity to grill them with questions that they had prepared, and primarily all the questions centered around revenue sharing. Patrick Marvin, a policy analyst for the Maine Heritage Policy Center, made some conclusions regarding revenue sharing in 2015. Intended to stabilize municipal property taxes and provide relief to Maine's property owners, revenue sharing has predictably fallen short of accomplishing its goal. Rather than keep property tax rates down and lessen the burden on Maine's property owners, the program has only enabled cities and towns to increase their budgets and spend above their means. End quote. Revenue sharing was designed to allow towns and cities to continue administering their existing services without placing an undue burden on property taxpayers. But sadly, it has not been used in this manner and has been abused by several lavish and wasteful cities and towns across Maine.
Stuff for your town roads. Then guess what? You can take whatever money you was using for that, put it elsewhere. You know, so you're going to get that money from the state. You still can use the other money for other areas, and it's still going to do the same thing. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help you.
Well, how do you then match federal funds?
What's that?
How would we match federal funds, not as a town, but as a state on transportation? Because somewhere in there we won't have the money to do that, and we're going to lose.
Well, so far, I'll tell you, Senator Collins has done a great job on transportation. He's done a great job, and he said that he's going to help whoever becomes chair the next time, and he has good insight on transportation. I'll tell you, anybody knows about transportation, Senator Collins knows about it, and he's a good man, and so I think that it's not going to hurt you federal funds.
I don't know a lot about the system. I haven't studied it all, but it sounds like you're taking the existing money that we get for our roads and bridges and just proportionately saying now that's part of revenue sharing. That's not. Is that true or not?
Take the first 5% and return it back to the communities.
Right.
And so there's no searching for the money. It's already there.
Right. So it certainly would help you.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have a question? If not, we'll move on to the next candidate.
Mr. Chair, does the residents get a chance to weigh in?
At this point, let's go through the 4 candidates if we could, and then maybe we'll revisit it. How's that sound? I'd like to get the 4 candidates out of the way so they each have a chance to speak.
Will they remain so that we can speak to them?
I think they probably will. You're a voter, a registered voter in this district, so I think they're going to speak to you.
I'll stick around for that.
I know one that may not. That's why I ask.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Education funding.
Your education funding right now, as of today's figure, you're at 59%. So I know you want to get to that 55%, but actually the figures that were given to me today, Winslow's receiving 59%. That's what I got through the education.
No, good, Mr. Chairman. I think Karen made the point, or maybe it was Scott made the point, was that that's 55% of the total state, and each town will vary a little bit. So the real objective, I always thought, was to get 55% for the entire state as a whole, and then each town, based on the EPS funding formula, will receive more or less depending on the tax base of the group. And the last number I heard was we were about 50%. So the real question is, how are we going to get from 50% to 55%? which will be a significant amount of money for the towns. That's the question.
But Winslow is at 59%, and the only thing that a person can do down there is if their town is not getting to the 55%, then they're the ones that need to advocate for
No,
this.
no town is guaranteed 55%. What we're saying is the whole state is guaranteed 5% of the whole.
Yeah.
And then depending on EPS, some get more than 55, some get less, depending upon their property values, enrollment, things of that nature. But statewide, it should be 55%.
Yes,
And that was passed by the voters, I think, over 10 years ago.
right.
To fund education at 55%. And I believe the 5% revenue sharing was passed by the voters in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. It was a long time ago, it was 5%. And I know it's been a long time since we've had 5%. And every year we haven't got it, we're down 1 mil in our property taxes as a round figure. And that's probably 6 to 8 years. We've lost a mil in revenue every year as a community.
We're not gonna stop fighting for this, but, I mean, realistically, we're doing better than other towns are doing, but we can do better. Of course we can do better, and we're always gonna fight for that, and it's not gonna change. This is what we do. A little bit at a time, we're reaching our goals. I know we can do better, and we will do better, but we need to do it as a unit. I don't point fingers, so I'm not gonna say, but it has been a stumbling block. And I think that this race will decide, the governor's race will decide how we go in the future. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, what concerns us, I think, and maybe I shouldn't speak editorial, but we're the ones that send out the property tax bills, and we're the ones that get the phone calls when the people receive them. And we've been handcuffed for, I think both of you were incumbents for several years, and I don't think there's been one budget passed with 5% revenue sharing while you two have been in office. That's just a guess, I'm not sure when
And
it
I
was.
believe that that has to do with the guy at the top too. So I believe
I'm not
that-
blaming one party, you're both from separate parties, I'm not blaming one thing of the legislature, both from two different branches of the legislature. There's 3 branches, there's 2 parties, and all share equally in the blame of our property tax. That the pressure has been put on the local property
So,
taxes. There's no
Senator
question
Seer
about
had
that.
made a comment about the county tax.
During the public comment period, a gentleman rose to explain a horrific situation that's been ongoing for the last 2 years. On one side, he's got a neighbor that has several dogs that are threatening dogs like pit bulls that bark incessantly, that are defecating all over the yard. And on the other side, he's got a bunch of cats, a neighbor who has cats that are defecating and urinating all over his yard and in his garden. And he's contacted animal control, contacted the police chief, and really is, took 15 minutes or so to explain how nothing's been done. So when it became clear that the night would go longer than expected, and indeed it took roughly 2 hours, and I was concerned that perhaps the candidates would end up leaving, I seized the opportunity to pose my questions to the chair, or through the chair. And it's a good thing that I did, because Representative Neto and Senator Searway, as soon as the questions were posed, they were gone in mere minutes. They took off, and there's about 15 or 20 people in the crowd that didn't have an opportunity to field any questions because they left.
Just in case we go way long. My name is James Mosher. Well, first of all, Mr. Chair, council members, thanks for the time. My name is James Mosher, and I am a resident. I heard a lot about revenue sharing tonight. As far as the government is concerned, one person's revenue is another's taxation. So I'll address through the chair this evening, but I have 2 questions for 2 of the 4 candidates. And I guess the appropriateness is I'll just bring it through you. So when we're talking about taxation, there are more than just school issues here in the state. And the last I checked, I think it's 2014 statistics, Maine ranked almost dead last. So we've got lackluster schools. And as a property owner, when we moved here, not too long ago, I took the opportunity to go through my taxes to see just about how much is taken out for the local schools. And I determined that to be about 70%, like 68, whatever it is.
It's a little less.
That's a chunk. So when we look at taxation, there's another issue in the state involving immigration. And this year, there's a bill, LD 1492, for immigrant resource centers for the city of Lewiston. And one of the candidates this evening voted in favor of immigrant resource centers. And I would just like to ask the council members, understanding the progressive paradigm in this state to flood, and it's been said, I believe by Speaker Eads, that the state is, former Speaker of the House, Mark Eads, that the state of Maine is too white, too old and too white. So the progressive paradigm is to flood the state with immigrants, the idea that they're going to take the jobs that Mainers just are unwilling to take. The idea is that we'll create resource centers like the one that they proposed to teach them essentially English learning as a second ESL classes. So my question to the council members is, when you look at taxpayers like myself, property owners like myself, who I didn't mention, I've got 4 children, got a lot of bills. I got, Mr. Hevener, you know I've been in your office over overdue dog permits. At one point you wanted to charge me $50 for dogs, and I said to you, rather matter-of-factly and a little profanely, that, hey look, I just want to be treated like an illegal. You know, treat me like an immigrant. You know, the general assistance form that's on your door. So the question is, how do you think the residents of our town feel about the fact that Senator Searway voted in favor of the immigrant resource centers that essentially grant, or the ESL for immigrants, when we could just, it'd be simpler, millions of dollars for this stuff. It would be simpler just to give them, you guys are familiar with Rosetta Stone tablets, the software. It'd be simpler to do that for them. They're only, what, $100? Second question, dealing with immigration. I've been down to Augusta numerous times since 2016. The first immigration bill that came on the table was LD 1652. And all that effectively does is lock the doors to illegals here in Maine. Would you know that the Federation of American Immigration Reform states that there's roughly 5,000 illegals here in the state at a cost of $47+ million annually? That's a large chunk. You guys are talking about revenue sharing. I venture to say, I've done the math. We're looking really, when you couple the price of immigration and illegals together, we're talking billions. The city of Portland, the city of Lewiston, they're reeling over property taxes. Real estate is getting scarce. Their property taxes going through the roof. The schools are overcrowded. And so 2016, 2017, 2018, there's been 3 separate chances for our own representative, Kathy Netto, to vote to just simply lock the doors on harboring havens like Portland. There's a progressive paradigm. Just down there a couple weeks ago about non-citizen, you're looking to cut me off, sir?
No, not yet, but it's getting
that
close.
gentleman took about,
I know, that's why
so
I'm patient.
I just want my fair share.
That's why I'm being patient.
It's
not gonna last much longer.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair, for your Mr. Russell, for your patience. The question to Representative, well, actually, to you gentlemen, about Representative Netto, is do you think the townspeople would be okay with the fact that we have to be responsible to register our dogs on time, pay our bills, pay my property tax, inspect my car, come down here for car registration, and all the rest of it that we're being billed for? I just want to be treated like an illegal. Just like Representative Netto has left the doors open for illegals in the state. How do you think Mr. Hebner, how do you think the residents of the town feel about illegal immigration? Thanks for your time.
Thank you.